Now it's my pleasure to introduce Andrew Scott with the Open Mind Project, who's really tackling into how we can deal with connecting people on the same table, whether it be religion, different circumstances you're coming from your ethnic background, whatever it may be. Mr. Scott is really laying a foundation to hopefully gather us all behind the same table so we can actually work on those solutions together, because we've all got to be on the same track if we expect to make that impact. And Sally's going to be walking through this conversation, so over to you, Sally.
I'm sitting in actually for Chip. I just found out about this. so he's indisposed at the moment, I guess. And we have here Mr. Andrew Scott, who is a resident of our beautiful valley here. And he has developed something called the Open Mind Project. And from what I understand, it's a lot about social sciences. It's a lot about diplomacy and relationship to social sciences, understanding how people relate and also where their mindsets are and how that plays into really creating collaboration and solutions. So, Andrew?
Thank you, Sally. I'm Andrew Scott, and I wanted to say something on behalf of the monks that came and did the blessing earlier, because they were laughing upstairs, and their friend Losan, who travels with them, who used to be one of the monks, he really wanted to come up here, but we were limited on time, obviously. So he really wanted me to say how important it is that we change from within and not just focus on changing the external things, like constantly throwing technology at technology without addressing our thoughts, beliefs, and actions, which are ultimately large participants in the reality we're creating. So we're living in the products of thousands of year-old belief systems, which ultimately has resulted in this modern exploitive economy that it turns out is not particularly healthy for our planet. Therefore, it's not particularly healthy for our long-term survival here. So the idea behind Open Mind Project is really to try to be the table, try to create the table that all the different participants, which is to say pretty much everyone alive today, where we can all come together and learn to communicate cooperatively, because we are at a point now in the human species that we've never been at before. There is no precedent for, as far as everything I've learned in the sciences, social sciences and hard sciences, we've never had this many billion people producing obviously this much carbon and garbage and trash and violence and heavy weaponry. So from the largest scale global leadership, international affairs, how do we stop nuclear weapons proliferation, to the smallest scale of how do we help day-to-day believers survive in rapidly changing circumstances and very difficult economies where we really need tools of compassionate dialogue, because people are drawn, the more stressed we are and the more bad news we consume in the media, the more we're going to be drawn to our habitual mental patterns, which means people are drawn back to the very places where they get the story that caused the undesirable outcomes, because those stories help us rationalize and justify those unhelpful outcomes.
So what are some of the what are some of the recommendations or the processes that you're recommending through your project to get to the place that you're talking about?
Okay, so Open Mind Project, ultimately, if there was one goal, it would be to promote critical thinking and systems integrative thinking, which is to empower people to step back from their immediate reactions, immediate attachment to beliefs. So the real tools are education. I mean, also if you want to stabilize population, I mean, this is science. If you want to stabilize populations, educate women. That's the fastest way you can stabilize population growth. So if you look at the third world where, you know, the biggest population growth is happening, and then if we talk about trying to bring the first world lifestyle to all those people, you know, if you try to give everybody a big wooden house, that's going to be quite stressful on the forests, right? So right now, there's a small population who are producing most of the trash. If we try to spread our modus operandi to all these other people, we're going to be dealing with an even bigger trash problem. So trying to promote long-term thinking is going to take education, and I think education starts with giving people a chance to tell their story. So the Open Mind Project, we're trying to raise money to have a film team traveling around the world, interviewing people from all backgrounds. That includes academic experts, lay believers, ministers, and this just gives people a chance to tell their story. So rather than going out into communities and saying, you guys are doing it wrong, this is, you know, your beliefs are screwed up in some way, I think it's really important that we just learn to listen to people and allow them to tell their story. And then we would edit those stories down to little vignettes and have them on the website. So the Open Mind Project presently, you know, we have a database of world religions. We're over 800 religions. So it's a search tool. And you know, we want to be a place where a person can go to begin learning about their own belief system and then come into contact with belief systems other than their own so that they can become introduced to the fact that, hey, this Buddhist is not so different from me if I'm a Mormon, or, you know.
How are you going to attract people to that when the average attention span is 10 seconds?
That's a very good question. I think this is talking about the now. I think Chip wrote the title of the talk, but it had something to do with the now. So as part of what the Open Mind Project is doing, I've also accumulated a whole lot of domain names. One of them is Nowism, nowism.one. So the idea of getting into the now, getting into the present moment and letting go of a lot, like I think slowing down. This conference is a lot about go, 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 speed up, we gotta be really fast, we gotta throw everything at this as quick as we can. And I think Open Mind Project is sort of a counterbalance, and in no way, it's a counterbalance that's actually gonna help facilitate the change that we need. Because you have to support people psychologically in periods of major transition. I don't know if that answered your question, but the point is, like, if we can slow down and begin to get people together in groups to communicate and to talk and to dialogue, what we're doing here on larger scales, because here we are, and we've got Republicans and we've got Democrats, and we can get along, and we're not yelling at each other, and we're having constructive dialogue. And that's what we need to be able to do on a broad scale.
Well, people need tools.
Oh, thanks.
People need tools to slow down. Reverend Durley told me the other day in the hall, he said, my wife gave me a button that I have underneath my shirt here. And he says, you know what it says? And I said, no. And he says, you can say no without feeling guilty. Wow. I mean, that's a lot of us in this space, is that we are constantly on the move, and people need tools to slow down and also to break through belief systems that have held them captive for so long. And one is the news. A lot of people don't watch the news anymore because they don't want that negative input every single day coming into their lives. And at the same time, we're in a conundrum because those of us who are in this kind of work need to know what's happening in the world. So does the Open Mind Project, are you at a place where you can gather people together and provide tools so that those that are in, on the front lines of all these different kinds of issues and concerns that we've been talking about and campaigns can really use those techniques to slow down and be more
I think that we
effective, is what you've been telling me.
Yeah, I think that we are at a place that we can potentially do a whole lot. We've got over 1 million followers on social media, so it's really a matter of how do we activate those people to begin to build community where they are. So we obviously have a website, and we're not getting as many people to the website as we could be, but I really see the potential for having conferences and or participating in global conferences where we do hold the space for the social sciences, almost as though I think NGOs and governments really need to be concerned and get behind this, and the people that are in charge of Facebook and the people that have the billions of dollars. I think they're the ones that should be supporting this work, because ultimately it's about helping people learn to be peaceful and cooperative. And I think this conference, I keep hearing about the narrative, and the importance of narrative, the importance of changing the story. And if you look, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the 2 largest religions on the planet are Christianity, number 1, Islam, number 2. Islam is set to overtake Christianity around 2050. And it's not a competition, but both of these religions, the largest, most powerful narratives on the planet, share a linear story, right? So there's a creator God who creates the universe and creates everything, and he's coming back soon, at some point, to end everything. And it's all over, and then the world starts over. Some people are saved, some people are screwed, which is not necessarily a good philosophy if we're trying to build cooperation multinationally. We've created a nation-state system where nation-states are acting like selfish individuals competing with each other for limited supply of goods, and we're trying to shift from a competitive economy to a regenerative economy that's going to be sustainable. So it might be important for us to start building an alternative narrative that says, and I'm not saying that one thing is true, one thing isn't true, it's just a matter of expedient means. Like, what's the best story to tell if we want to create a sustainable reality? It's probably a story that says we're going to be here. We've got nowhere else to go. This is where we are. And we have to start where we are, which is the present moment. The now, as Chip likes to call it.
And now,
Here you are.
well, I'm so glad that you could help guide this conversation. It takes 2 of us to wrangle Andrew. But I wanted to just
We've
jump in.
got 2 minutes left.
Great, so I just wanted to jump in, if you don't mind, and talk about the now movement. Since I've met Andrew, I've become a nowist. Because I think that, really when you think about it, no matter which religion you subscribe to, which is, what is it? We have a choice of Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Taoist, Zoroastrian, wait a minute, Native American, what am I leaving out, about 10 or 20? Anyway, whatever, however many there are. But then there's just now. And it's only now moving into now. And really, when you think about it, there's no past and there's no future, there's only right now. So being present makes a lot of sense, especially when we're trying to solve climate change, right? And so Andrew has some extraordinary things that I become aware of, like 2,500 URLs. Half of them I want. How'd you do that, by the way? Not to mention the fact that he figured out how to get 1.2 million likes on Facebook. How did you do that?
Exactly.
Persistence.
One guy.
7 years of, I think we spent about $20,000, honestly, on boosting ads, but when I look at the metrics, that's like unbelievable that you don't get that many likes. So there's clearly interest out there in Open Mind Project. We have more likes in the Middle East. I think Facebook basically boosts more outside of America. I'm not sure why. Maybe Americans are just more valuable, so to speak. But I'm really excited that we've got people all over the world that are potential change activators.
Yeah. Well, I want to finish this, if you don't mind, since I just joined, with something really sweet for both of you, okay? Because I know that both of you were very dear friends with John Denver. And John Denver might have been the original nowist, if you really think about it. He did something for this world with his voice that only he could have done. And I know that, you've known him since you were a little boy. I know that Sally was very good friends with John in multiple levels. And so in the spirit of JD, our day, by the way, never would have happened if I hadn't gone to John Denver's Choices for the Future symposiums and seen that model and it imprinted. And our day is a little bit of a, further down the road expression of that. And so maybe just finish with the last 3 seconds, just a really poignant John Denver memory to honor his spirit.
You're the guest.
Okay, well, John Denver was like an uncle to me. We were neighbors. Growing up, he was really close friends with my granddad. So I don't have any, I wouldn't say, he was like Uncle John, I suppose. I just remember him fly fishing, standing out. The last time I saw him, I was 16, which was not long before he passed away.
I have a story.
Let Sally tell.
I have a story. This was, I'm going to say in the 1980s. And I was working on the Alaska Lands Bill, which was in deep contention in the Senate. We needed to get it passed before President Carter went out of office. And we were right on the edge of that. And I had been deeply involved in the Alaska Coalition and getting all the pieces together. And it was 101 million acres of Alaska, wild rivers, wilderness areas, wildlife preserves, and national parks that were on the table and on the line. And there was a series of amendments that were coming up called the Tsongas Amendments, which was a senator who, named after him, who was putting them forward. And they were really, really key amendments. And if we didn't get them, it would have gutted the bill. So I was on John's board at that point and actually was a chairman for Choices Conference and getting all that going.
Great.
And I went to John and I said, I want you to come to Washington. And he says, I hate Washington. And I said, you've got to come. You have got to come and be on the floor in the Russell Committee building, in the Russell building, in the committee room, which is the largest committee room on the Hill. I want you to stand on a wooden box, which is you and your guitar. And I want you to sing Alaska. And I'm going to have everybody in the House that I can get there, and I will have almost the whole Senate there. And you've got to do this. And he said, I'm not going to do it. I don't like the system. I'm not going to support the system. I said, you don't support the system, then you don't support preserving all the things that you care about that are in this bill in Alaska. So finally he relented. So off we go. And it was like a month and a half later. And so the committee room was packed because it was John. And we did all of our meet and greets, and we move over, and here was the wooden box. And I said, go, 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 go. And he goes, yeah. So he went over, he gets up, hand him his guitar, and he starts to play. And it was John's voice, it was the frequency of John's voice that could touch hearts like no other voice I've ever heard. It was the frequency. And so, which is energy, and everything is energy, everything is frequency. So he starts playing, and he starts playing kind of soft. And pretty soon, nobody said, shh, nobody said be quiet. Pretty soon, the room, starts to temper down. And there he is, all by himself, no band, playing and singing Alaska, and you could have heard a tear drop on the floor. It was extraordinary. And after it was over, guess what? The bill passed.
Well, in the spirit of now and in the spirit of John Denver, thank you both for your leadership.
Thank you, Chip.